Hello and welcome to the Rebels247 Round Table. I'm David Johnson along with Webb, Lewis, and Brandon Red here on this Friday. I just got off the telephone with the brand new Ole Miss quarterback commit, Kendrick Doss. Kendrick Doss pulling the trigger for the Rebels while participating in a 7-on-7 tournament over in Tupelo, Mississippi today. Kendrick certainly excited about joining the Ole Miss family, excited about his prospects at one day quarterbacking the Ole Miss football team. Webb, what do you think about Kendrick Doss and the type of player that he is? He's the number 16 dual threat quarterback in the nation.
Well, number 16 doesn't really do Kendrick Doss justice, in my opinion, especially now when you put him into the Hugh Freeze spread offense. The tools and the skill set that he brings to the table is tailor-made to run this high-octane 50-50 run-pass offense that Bo Wallace ran this past season. We'll see again this year.
You look at his speed too, Dave, and everybody talks about how fast he is, and he is fast and he's athletic. But I think something that's been kind of lost in all this is his strength. So he's a strong quarterback, and like Webb was saying, in a Hughes Freeze offense, the strength of the quarterback to be able to break tackles. You saw it a lot with Bo Wallace that he could break a tackler too. You saw it in the spring with Mikael Miller. The ability to break a tackle in the open field to gain an extra 10, 15 yards, I think will be huge for the Rebels down the road in Doss because he's a strong player, strong lower body, and knows how to make people miss in the open field.
When you talk about a quarterback, the guy that's got to play that position, the guy that has to command attention inside the huddle, Kendrick Doss strikes me as the caliber of young man who will have no problem with that. Talking to Doss about the prospects of when he might see playing time at Ole Miss, Doss fully understands that Bo Wallace is the starting quarterback at Ole Miss and barring injury will likely be so for the next 2 seasons. So Kendrick understands there's a strong possibility that he would come in, probably have to take a red shirt his true freshman season and then get to compete for playing time and perhaps even the job as a redshirt freshman during the 2015 season.
I think it shows the maturity of the kid to be able to understand that, I might not be able to come in and play right off the bat, but I'm going to take my time. I'm going to learn in a system where I feel I can succeed. And to me, it's just pure maturity for a kid that's just going to be a senior in high school to understand and know the process. A lot of times we hear about kids and the first thing they say is, well, when do I get to play? When is my turn? And for a guy like that, I think it's special.
Doss, great head on his shoulders. I got to talk with Rayshawn Smith, Ole Miss signee and freshman a good bit, who was a teammate of Doss in Florence. Rayshawn is at Ole Miss as a linebacker, but also played wide receiver at Florence. And all he could talk about was that's my quarterback. He controlled everything. What he said goes. And you got to think he's excited about that. And hey, what kind of QB competition is going to be setting up for that 2015 season, the year after Wallace, with Doss, Kincaid, Buchanan, and Mikael Miller will be a senior.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be interesting, and there'll be chapters of this story that are yet to be written for sure, but you just have to feel really good about the quarterback position at Ole Miss. For so many years there, it seemed like the Rebels, after Eli Manning, could not get a quarterback that came into the program from a high school standpoint and stayed with it for 4 to 5 years. Now, with the commitment of Doss this morning, you've got Buchanan, you have Kincaid, now you have Kendrick Doss that are all going to be able to grow up and maturate inside Hugh Freeze's offensive system after Bo Wallace leaves campus. And you just got to feel great about the prognosis of the quarterback position at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. Oftentimes you hear competition breeds excellence. And when you have this many quarterbacks that will be battling for one spot, you got to first off think, well, we should see some pretty fun fall and spring practices in the next couple of years when you see these guys going head to head. And then you look and say, well, you know what? Now the Ole Miss staff gets to pick the best guy for the job, And David, you related to it. There's been times where Ole Miss had to pick a guy because there wasn't really many options. Now you look at a group of guys where Coach Freeze gets to look at the quarterbacks and says, okay, we have 2 or 3 good quarterbacks. Now let's go out there and pick the best guy for the job.
Before we leave Kendrick Doss, I want to throw this out there. Rebels247 staff 3-0 in their crystal ball pick with Kendrick Doss coming to Ole Miss.
Nailed it.
Yeah, pretty excited about that.
I've only missed one thus far, and that's Markel Pack. And I'm sticking with Ole Miss on Markel Pack. I feel as if Markel Pack will eventually come over into the Ole Miss fold.
I totally agree. I think your pick with Markel Pack is on the money.
Yeah, that can be corrected for sure and make you 100%.
Now, still sticking with quarterbacks, let's talk a little bit about Bo Wallace. We get a lot of questions about Bo Wallace's rehab post-shoulder surgery. Everything, every bit of intelligence gathering that we have is that Bo Wallace is coming on strong, will be 100% and better than ever by the time Vanderbilt arrives to open up the 2013 season.
You know, when you look at Bo last season, and especially towards the end of the year, you could tell that that shoulder might have been hindering him. Not because of his numbers, because he put up great numbers, but his arm strength. You know, a couple times the deep ball, it seemed to go 10, 15 yards short. I expect this season Wallace to have stronger arm, and his accuracy will be there, if not better. I expect even a better season from Bo Wallace this year.
You're going to see a different Bo Wallace this season, where last summer and spring he spent his time in a locked-up battle with Barry Brunetti, really, for the starting position. And now he's winning the summer. He's the starter. He's the man. He's the face of the offense, so to speak. I don't think people realize, looking back at last season, because of his numbers, how hurt he actually was. Because he didn't talk about it. Monday morning press conference, all he would say was, "Yeah, it's my shoulder. It's there a little bit. It's not too bad." But then you find out doctors are even saying after the season that they're amazed that he threw so many passes.
Well, that's not the kind of intelligence that you want out there for your opponents to have their hands on either. So good reason to keep perhaps how injured Bo was throughout the latter half of the season in-house and not get it out there so that it's in your opponent's scouting reports. Now, a healthy Bo Wallace, you just really expect some great things out of the Ole Miss passing game this season. There should be adequate protection up front on that offensive line, which I firmly believe is going to be led by tackle Pierce Burton, who just had an incredible spring. You've got the weapons in the backfield, not only from a run game standpoint, but also as reception threats out of the backfield. And then your wide receiving core with Dante Moncrief, Jamez Logan, Vince Sanders, throw Laquan Treadwell in there. Things are going to be very, very exciting on the offensive side of the football for the Ole Miss Rebels this fall.
If I'm a defense and I'm looking at the Ole Miss offense, I'm pretty scared right now. Going back to Bo Wallace just for 1 second, we talk about this a lot, and it's just mental toughness. He's physically tough, yes, because he played with his shoulder, but how many times did he respond after a bad throw, after an interception? He's mentally strong, and I think that's something you need in a Hugh Freeze offense. And this offense will be something fun to watch for many years while Hugh Freeze is the head coach.
Guys, I know it's early. Practice hasn't even begun yet. But how important is the season opener on that Thursday night in Nashville against the Vanderbilt Commodores?
It's as big as it gets. You take all the games they played last year, none of them hold the magnitude that this opening night game does against Vanderbilt. It dictates, in my mind, in my opinion, I'm not to say a loss that they can't bounce back, but I believe it dictates the rest of the season.
I totally agree, Webb. To me, it's all about momentum. So many times in football, especially college football, you hear about momentum. Well, Thursday night game, the whole nation will be watching. It's time for either Ole Miss to shine, or they're going to have a tough time picking themselves back up if they don't win.
Here's one way of looking at it. If you win at Vanderbilt, you're coming home against Southeast Missouri. Now, since the Jacksonville State debacle in 2010, nobody ever takes anything for granted when you're talking about Ole Miss. But if you beat Vandy, the odds are you're going to beat Southeast Missouri. The worst, you're going to leave Tuscaloosa, Alabama, after Game 4 is 2-2 overall and 1-1 inside the SEC. And then you start looking at some ball games that really and truly you could be favored to win.
I agree. I think the schedule itself, last year was a tough schedule. It was one of the toughest schedules in the nation. The way this schedule's set up with the home and away and the way that some of the competition in the SEC is stacked up, you can't afford to drop any.
You got to get those first two, because you get those first two, you've got 3 straight road games. Where are they at? At Texas, at Alabama, at Auburn. And then your reward for getting through that 3-game stretch is you get to come back to Oxford and host the LSU Tigers and the Texas A&M Aggies. Folks, that is as tough of a first 7 ball games as anybody in the nation will face this fall.
And Dave, we've talked about this before too. It's kind of a tale of 2 different seasons combined into one. If you can, like you're talking about, if you can finish strong in that first half of the season, if you take care of your business, if you don't allow teams to upset you, you can finish 5-1 6-0 in the last 6 ball games.
18 commitments now in the class of 2014 for the Ole Miss Rebels. Guys, all 18 going to stick?
I honestly, I mean, especially if last season taught us anything, and by season I mean recruiting season, is you're always going to drop a few, and it's going to be for different reasons. It could be a mutual agreement. It could be the guy just decides Ole Miss is too far away from home, and the right team comes knocking on the door. This early in the game with that many, I think, yeah, we'll probably drop 1 or 2.
They always say that it's better to have a commitment and keep him because it's easier to do so than not have somebody committed because it's easier to lose them that way. Obviously, there's some good players out there that are starting to get taken. People are starting to take notice of them, whether it be Alabama or the LSU or the Big Squad. I kind of agree with Webb. I think there might be a player or two that drops, whether it be because we find somebody a little bit more athletic or a little bit better, or maybe those players find a better fit. I don't see all players sticking at this time.
Also, some players out there that the Rebels stand a good chance of flipping. We mentioned Markel Pack. Also, linebacker Sean Hamilton out of Carver High School over in Montgomery, Alabama. Hamilton, one of the top inside linebacking prospects in the nation. Certainly a critical need area for the Ole Miss Rebels this year. He's coming over to visit in July. His best friend is Ole Miss commit Charles Stanberry. He has made it perfectly clear that he's still looking at Ole Miss, even though he is committed to Nick Saban and Alabama.
Yeah, I think Hampton is a great option for Ole Miss if he decides to come here. Ole Miss is looking for a Mike linebacker. They've got a couple stinger linebackers now, and I know that he is a top target for the Rebels and that they would love to have him and that he fits a need, that they need a middle linebacker bad because they have not got one committed yet, and they're going full force after him.
Linebacker is a position that could very easily be the marquee spot in the signing class, in my opinion, with a guy like Hamilton. Also, there's Niles Morgan and Clifton Garrett out there. Garrett looking more and more likely, in my opinion, in my crystal ball projections, to go to LSU. Niles Morgan, I feel like the Rebels could be in a little bit better shape with.
I agree with that assessment exactly. I think Morgan at Creekmont High School, where Laquan Treadwell played, where Anthony Standifer played, there's a little bit of a pipeline that's been developed between there and Ole Miss, and certainly that's going to be one to watch as things go down to the wire. Now let's look quickly at the top in-state uncommitted prospects still out there, guys, and I'll start off with Callaway offensive lineman Roderick Taylor. My hunch, my opinion is that it will be an Ole Miss Alabama battle that's probably going to be fought down to the wire. What do you say?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with him it's Ole Miss Alabama, and in fact, a lot of the top talent that is left in Mississippi, there's only a couple that are going to be an Ole Miss Mississippi State battle. The rest are going to be Florida State, Ole Miss Alabama, and things like that. Taylor, though.
Yeah, you're talking Ole Miss Mississippi State battles. Gary Green, the linebacker out of Greenville Weston, and then Jesse Jackson, the very fine wide receiver out of Petal, Mississippi. Probably the two that are going to battle down. Though I will say this, I think Arkansas has made a move for Gary Green. Gary Green's planning on going to Arkansas in July, and Greenville, as the crow flies, is just right across the river from the state of Arkansas.
Right.
A lot of Razorback fans over in that area.
And, going back to Jesse Jackson, too, forever he was considered a heavy Mississippi State lean. Not anymore. He has been to Ole Miss more in the last 2 months than he has been to Starkville. He's really built a great relationship. And in talking with Jesse, he always says that his family feels a little bit more comfortable in Oxford than Starkville. And I think moving down the road, that could play big for the Rebels.
Breland Speaks, the defensive lineman at Callaway High School, part of the Callaway Four with Rod Taylor, Ronald Walker, and Dale Harris. Of course, Walker and Harris already committed to Ole Miss. My crystal ball has Breland Speaks coming to Ole Miss, and I think it's unanimous.
I completely agree. Speaks is a phenomenal athlete. I mean, he's a defensive lineman that could play tight end if he wanted to. Phenomenal athlete. I think he's a Rebel before it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think we all three have got Breland Speaks as a crystal ball and to Ole Miss. And I was talking to him the other day too, and he said that he feels like Ole Miss is family, and they're starting to call the Callaway Four the Fab Four is what they call themselves now. And he said they all talk about playing with one another, so that could be something to look for in the future.
Okay, a lot left to be played out in the recruiting wars between now and National Signing Day, February 2014. Hey, one more big event left. for the summertime, the Southern Elite Combine set for Wednesday, July 10th at FNC Park in Oxford, Mississippi. And Webb, we've already got quite a few top prospects that will be in Oxford, Mississippi that day to show their wares.
We do. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited about spark training and spark drills, the 40-yard dash and 5-10-5 and the vertical. They're fun to put numbers on paper to see how they stack up. But the 7-on-7 competition between some of these receivers that are signed up to come to this and some of these DBs being thrown to by these quarterbacks, it's going to be intense. And then the O-line, D-line battles at this thing, they're going to be amazing. They really are.
And, last year there was a couple of players that were kind of discovered at this combine with Trey Bledsoe and a couple of those players. C.J. Hampton really shined.
Yeah, that's the guy that comes to mind. If you want to talk about last year's Southern Elite Combine field, C.J. Hampton rolled into Oxford at the Southern Elite Combine, already committed to Ole Miss. But outside of Ole Miss, he was a relative unknown. Now C.J. Hampton, as we speak today, is in the state of Oregon at the opening.
That's right. He's riled up all kind of offers over the past year. C.J. Hampton is just, I think, a 96 now overall rating on 247 Sports, and really exploded after the combine.
Yeah, he's hands down the hottest player in the state of Mississippi right now, and top 2 or 3 hottest players probably in the Southeast, and everybody wants him right now.
Has that Alabama offer and is being hotly pursued by Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide.
And that will be one to watch. We were talking about commitments to hold. My opinion, that will be one to watch until National Signing Day.
Well, you're listening to the first installment of the Rebels247 Round Table, and this is going to become a regular feature on Rebels247. We hope you like it, and absolutely give us your comments on the thread, on the board, and let us know what you think, what you want to hear us talk about, and we're just excited to be with you in this format.
We appreciate the time, guys, and yeah, like David said, we'd love any kind of comments, any questions you want us to answer on here. It'd be great for us.
Absolutely. This is going to be a lot of fun and something we hope to do on a weekly basis, and maybe even pick up a little bit more as February rolls around and everybody wants to talk about recruiting and things like that, because we know based off experience it gets pretty intense around December and the visits and the final weekends go down.
Would like to say one other thing. I want to welcome all the new members to the site. 2 weeks ago, Rebels247 finished number 3 in the nation in the 247 network for new subscriptions. Last week, we were number 7, so 2 consecutive weeks of top 10 finishes of new subscribers on the site. We cannot thank you enough. Those of you that have been with us since the start and those of you that are just coming on board, let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to know. We're here to serve you. For Brandon Redd and Webb Lewis, I'm David Johnson. You've been listening to the Rebels247 Roundtable.